Hey guys, so I made this picture of Unicron in After Effects. I made a couple of them, and I thought I'd do a little walkthrough slash tutorial about how you might do something like this in After Effects. Even though it's just a still picture, I do in After Effects because you can do some pretty quick work with stuff like optical flares and fractal noise, and yeah, you could use these skills to make video stuff too, even though we're just making a still picture today. Before we get into it, I have to plug my Instagram where I post stuff like this. It's called Spark Side of the Force. I just made it fairly recently. You should go follow that. But anyways, let's get started on how to make something like one of these images. The first thing I did was I just take this one image of Unicron, put it in a composition, and as you can see, it's just him in the dark, and I lit him from one side so that we could get that kind of sun effect, like he was being lit by the sun in space. And since it's dark, you don't have to be super precise with your mask, which is cool. So I might move a little bit fast, but I'll try to explain everything I'm doing so that you can keep up if you're not super proficient in After Effects. So the first thing I'm going to do is click the layer, click S to scale it down, make him a little bit smaller, and then the next thing I'm going to do is just start masking him out. So I'm going to grab the pen tool up here and go through and start drawing some points. So I'm not going to do it very precisely right now, but basically you can just cut things out like that, and then you have just Unicron, and you can turn on this transparency layer right here to see what parts of the image are now transparent. So obviously the stuff behind him is transparent. If I click the layer again and then grab the pen tool again, then I can start selecting the part within his rings. And if we go in there and then click on the layer, click M to bring up the masks, and then this mask too, I'm just going to change it from add to subtract. And that's the gist of it. I'm not going to bore you with how to mask him, so I'm just going to go into the part that I've already masked. If I click it, you can see the mask, which is still not very precise, but it's a lot more detailed than I care to show. And so this composition has nothing but the image in it. If I turn on transparency, you can see it looks like that. Since it's against a dark background and we're putting him in space, you don't have to be that precise, which is really nice. So I'm going to click this Unicron masked composition, and I'm going to bring it into a new composition, and it's going to create Unicron mask 3 because I already did that once before this. So yeah, here's our composition. First thing I'm going to do is make kind of a space background. So I'm going to go layer, new, solid, type in fractal stars. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna change it to black just so I can associate it with the space background, even though it doesn't matter. Drag it under Unicron, go effect, noise and grain, fractal noise. So I'm gonna turn up the contrast significantly, and then I'm gonna turn the brightness down, and then I'm gonna go to transform, click scale, start scaling it down, and turn down the brightness even more. And already we've got something that, if I looked at this, I would think it's, space. So that's pretty cool. Turn the brightness down a little more actually, and yeah, you can just turn the brightness up or down to get, how many stars per se you have. Increase the contrast, and turn the brightness down again to make them a little less sparse. You can change the complexity. So if you bring the complexity down, they start to look more, I guess you could say, uniform. I'm going to turn my resolution full. If you turn it up, it feels more, detailed, more complex perhaps. But I'll just keep it at the default 6 for now. And that looks kind of good. I'm going to make it a little brighter to have a little more stars. And yeah, so I am going to use a plugin called Optical Flares. So layer, new, solid, flare. It's from Video Copilot, which if you've never been to videocopilot.net and you're trying to learn After Effects, I highly recommend going there. I'm going to right click on the layer, change blending mode to screen, and Optical Flares just creates these light flares. So like I said, I lit him from one side so that it looked like there would be a sun kind of illuminating him, or a star. And I'm going to bring this over here, and just because I like the orange sun feel, I'm going to go in here to the preset browser, pick something that looks like a sun, such as perhaps real sun or evening sun. I'll pick real sun. I'm going to bring it over here in the preview window so I could get an idea of what it's going to feel like. And then I kind of like streaks like that to kind of pop out. I like the look of that. I just went to lens objects, grab some spikes. You could go to custom, maybe grab color loop hoop and add that kind of thing. I'm not crazy about that right now, so I'm going to hide it. And I'm going to press OK. And there we go. It's looking pretty cool. I'm going to move it even further away because it's a little bright right now. It's a little intrusive. And then I don't want it to be that big. Maybe I want it to have the impression that it's a lot further away. So I'm going to change the scale from 100 to 50. Actually, maybe 75. Oops. And when I made this, I just totally experimented. So I'm going to do a lot of like changing numbers, playing around. And, you know, I encourage you to do the same if you're trying to make something. I don't expect that you're going to go take a picture of Unicron and replicate this. But hopefully you'll learn some stuff that will inspire you to create, you know, something similar but original. So just experiment until you get something you like. The next thing I'm going to do is kind of make like this, like the cloud stuff I had. Sorry, my preview for the original was loading. So let's go back here. I'm going to go layer, new, solid, type in fractal cloud. I'm going to change it to gray so that I associate it with the gray cloud. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go effect, noise and grain, fractal noise. Let's change it. I'm going to increase the contrast, and then I'm going to increase the scale of it significantly until it's a bit bigger like that. I'm going to increase the contrast again. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Maybe change it to cloudy. No, I don't like that. Change it back to basic. Contrast, even more contrast. That looks like something we can work with. I'm going to bring it to the top so that we're not distracted by Unicron. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mask out a random part of it. But I like to mask along the edges of the kind of cloud formations we have. And I think that looks neater than just kind of drawing a random shape. Whenever you feather it, it just turns out looking better to me. So I'm going to go here, kind of pick out some shapes I see. It's not perfect, but I like to make some effort to kind of get something that, I don't know, looks like a formation and not like I just put a random billion points down. But it definitely doesn't matter how precise you're being. It's not that important. I'm going to click on the layer, press F to feather it out. I'm going to feather it probably all the way up to somewhere around 150. That looks pretty good. You can click this button right here to get rid of the mask outline so you can see what you're doing. Click the blending mode, right click to get to blending mode screen so that the dark areas are see-through. And then just kind of rotate it, put it out here somewhere, and then click T on the layer to bring up the opacity, and then bring the opacity down a bit. I'm going to put it under Unicron down here since technically it should be behind him. And then if you wanted to, you could bring it behind him. The problem with that in my example is that my mask is not very good, so it starts to reveal that. So I'm going to keep it not directly behind him, maybe a little bit over here. I'm going to rotate it again, press R to bring up your rotation, and that looks kind of cool. So that's the gist of just making like a cloud like that. You can click it, press Ctrl D to duplicate it, rotate it again, put it up there, change the evolution so that it changes, you know, increase the contrast so that maybe you have some brighter areas than before so it looks a little more dynamic. I think I did a little too much just now, so I undid it. Maybe play with the complexity up or down. You know, just experiment and make kind of a nice formation. And we can go in here, maybe I can click the top one and click effect, color correction, tint, and instead of white, I'll change white to red or something. So now we've got kind of some color in it. Maybe the bottom one, I'll click my top layer, click the tint effect, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, but instead of red, I'll pick blue perhaps, and now we've got this kind of generic, like, you know, space scene that you usually see. You definitely see a lot of that in like the 1986 movie with Unicron, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so the next thing I want to show is Unicron himself, I like to add a little bit of a glow to him. So I'm going to click on the Unicron layer, go Effect, Stylize, Glow. And now you can see we've got this nice glow because in my imagination, when he's out in space, you know, the sun is hitting him, he's going to kind of have a little bit of a glow about him. So I'm going to increase the radius. I like that soft like edge glow that you get in all the really, all the highlights. You can move the threshold so that maybe you only glow the really extreme highlights or you glow even more of him. I'll just keep the threshold at the default. I think the default 60% is pretty good. The intensity is a little bit too much, so I'm going to go here to the 1, maybe change it to 0.5. Okay, so that's a nice touch. And the next thing I'm going to do is also glow the fractal stars we made because they're looking a little dull now that we're starting to add some like bright things. So I'm going to go Effect, Stylize, Glow. I'm going to increase the radius a little bit. Now, as you can tell, it's pretty hard to see. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to change the intensity a lot. So now you can start to see it really. If we play with the threshold, I don't think much changes since there's not really that much to change. You can bring the threshold down, it'll start to glow a lot more things. But I don't love the way that looks, so I'm gonna go back and put it at 60 again. I just want it to have kind of a touch of a glow. I'm also feeling like, you know, these aren't actually stars, they're just kind of little waves. Maybe you can pretend they're galaxies or something, but I don't like that they have such irregular shape. So I'm gonna go in and just bring the brightness down a little bit more so that they are more like specks and not like those chunks. Maybe right there is a good spot. And then the next thing I want to do is add more stars that have a little more variance in the glow. So the way I like to do that is kind of, maybe it's a little bit convoluted, but I think it's pretty fast for what you can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, call this layer Flare Stars. I'm going to change the color to like a bright blue, just to keep things organized when I'm looking at the colors, because it helps me to see the colors down here. I'm going to go Effect, Video Copilot, Optical Flares. And then I'm going to go to the options, and I'm going to clear all, and I'm just going to drag in the lens orbs. So these are just circles, as you can see, obviously. I'm going to turn the brightness of them way up, and then I'm going to change their color to white, and then I'm going to bring the scale down so that we just have these little specks, these little circles. And then you can play with stuff like the brightness randomness. I think 50% is good. I like to bring the scale randomness up just a little bit, just so it's more, I don't know, chaotic. And then you can bring the brightness up because I want the brightest parts to be really bright. So I'm going to bring the brightness way up. And then I'm going to press OK. And then I'm going to change the blending mode of that to screen so that it composites on the stuff under it. And these are way too big. I'm going to go back here and click on the lens orbs again. And for scale, how about 5? Press OK. Still a little bit too big for me. Go back here, change it to 3. Like I said, this is all experimenting. And 3 is looking okay. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. So right now, the stars are just kind of there. Actually, let's go into the options of these stars, of the lens orbs. And you can just click on the lens orbs, and then somewhere over here, the illumination radius, turn that all the way up, or not all the way up, but enough so that it fills the screen, so that instead of it illuminating only where the position of the flare is, it just kind of illuminates the entire screen. So now you can see we've got it all over the place. If you don't like that, if you don't like where they are, you can't really do much about it. You can move the whole layer, and then maybe you can, let's say, move the layer over here, duplicate the layer, and then move the duplicated layer over here. If you want to rearrange them, I'm going to undo that right now. But, I mean, for now, this is okay. and they are on top of Unicron, which is not good. But rather than just moving it underneath Unicron, we need to do something else. What I'm going to do is just grab a circular mask, mask where Unicron is, and then I'm going to change it to subtract. I'm not going to feather it at all, make sure that I didn't accidentally cut any in half, but that looks good. They're not on top of Unicron anymore. So what I'm going to do is pre-compose this layer, and we're actually going to use optical flares to make these stars look more like stars and less like little white circles. So layer, pre-compose, move all attributes, and then I'll just call it flare stars pre-comp. Press OK. And wow, that does not look good. Change it to back to blending mode. Screen. Okay, that looks a lot better. It doesn't really matter, but yikes, that did not look good. And then we're going to use something called the Luminance option in optical flare. So we're going to go layer, new, solid, and then let's change, I'm going to call it Luminance Stars. I'm going to keep that color, press OK. It's going to have optical flares on it, effect, video copilot, optical flares. And right here where it says source type, change it from 2D to luminance. And here's where the real magic happens. If you change the source layer to the pre-comp we made, then you get this. So take this Luminance Stars layer, change the blending mode to screen, of course, and then we've got this. So what's happening is it's taking these dots and putting a flare everywhere that they are, which is super cool. I think the Luminance feature is super underrated. I never see people talk about it. But yeah, and you can go in, and right now it's this default flare that it's using to flare things, but it has a little bit too much lens objects on it. I just like it to be simple with a glow and maybe a little bit of this soft light iris. I'm going to turn the soft light iris down a little bit because I know it's going to be too much. I'm going to change the brightness to 25 just so it's barely there. And then I'm going to press OK. And that should be an improvement. And well, actually it's not. But what we can do is change the scale down a lot to, let's say, 25. Let's see what that looks. Still way too bright, but you can see the power of this effect is just being able to change these parameters and have tons of flares change. Maybe flares of 3. So that's a good size. And actually, the reason why it didn't matter when we changed this is because I'm going to turn it off by clicking this eye, because I don't like the way it looks with them under it. I like them to just be like these little lights. And they do look a little dark. You can change the brightness of them to be even brighter if you wanted. Maybe something like 130 will look nice. They start to look a little bit like, they look a little bit too even for me, I guess. Like, I like them to be more subtle. So I'm going to keep them at 100. And I might even change the scale to something like 2 instead of 3, so they're small. But they add some nice dynamicy, especially in stuff like these clouds over here. It's nice because we don't just have the dull stars of the fractals. And if we go back here to the fractal, maybe we increase the brightness a little bit, and then the stars really feel at home amongst the fractal stars. It's just a matter of, if you don't mind zooming in and seeing that, you get some stuff like this. But it's just a fast way to make kind of a nice random looking night sky. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you how to create more of these kind of cloud things. So the next thing I'm going to do is some flaring to Unicron himself. So if like I said, with the bright light shining on him, maybe the glow of him has some flaring in and of itself. So all we have to do is go layer, new, solid, call it Unicron flaring. I'm going to make it orange to match him. Doesn't matter, but it's just for organization. Effect, video copilot, optical flares again. Luminance, I'm going to go into the options, get rid of all of this, and do nothing but maybe that streak, which I really like because it looks really stylish and sleek when things glow with a streak, in my opinion. Kind of like in the car commercials, you always see that. And then change this iris down again to 20. soft light iris. Press OK. And then for the source layer, we want it to be Unicron. So in this case, it's Unicron masked. And then we're going to change the threshold. So first I should right click this and say blending mode screen. But you can see what it's doing is it's flaring him. It's flaring all his bright spots. So we can take, right now it's way too much, but let's change the brightness to just like 25 or something. And then the scale is a bit wide too, so maybe make that, I don't know, 30. And that's cool. It's looking nice. Maybe a little bit too big still. Maybe change it to 12. But yeah, I'm kind of liking that. Maybe in the options we can make the streak smaller by going into the streak options and changing the length of it down a little bit so that it doesn't kind of fly across the screen like this. And when we do that, we can change the scale back up to 20 or so. And then maybe play with the threshold and see if we like it better. I definitely like it better when it kind of encompasses more of him instead of just being like one spot on him. It's getting hard to see, so I'm going to turn the brightness back up to 50 so we can see what we're doing. And actually that looks pretty cool right there. I like that a lot. So when we zoom in, you can kind of see like these bright spots. Instead of just the glow, you get this nice streak effect, which is really cool. It kind of gives it like a real, like if you took a picture of a giant metal planet of destruction in space, it might flare a little bit from the light, you know? So I like to add that. Speaking of like taking a real picture, the other thing I like to add, especially because my picture of Unicron is grainy, is grain on top of everything. So I don't like looking at Unicron and seeing that, oh, this is clearly like a photograph with grain on it, and then looking over here at the stars in the sky and it being crystal clear, digital, no grain. So what I like to do is go layer, new, solid. I always make it gray, call it grain. And then over here in my effects and presets, I'm going to search for an effect called fast film grain. I'll just type in fast, and this is something you have to download from Video Copilot. You can just make grain by add grain, but I'm use fast film grain because it's fast. Right click, blending mode, change it to overlay, and voila, you can see that it just, bam. So it just adds grain to everything, and you might think that's kind of dumb or nitpicky, but I don't know, it's just a nice touch in my opinion. When you look over here at this edge, it makes the whole thing feel a little bit more cohesive. And if you turn it on and off, you can see it really does change things, like especially this sun spot over here. It really changes the feel of that. So to me, it's a worthwhile effect, worthwhile change. The next thing I'm going to do is create more of this like Nebula stuff. I had a very different looking one, so I'm just going to go show you how to create that. It's layer, new, solid. It's going to be a fractal noise again, and color doesn't matter. I'm going to stop changing it. I'm going to go effect, noise and grain, fractal noise. And if you change this stuff in fractal noise to fractal type and noise type, you can get all kinds of cool effects. So you might change it to, what I did before was swirly and spline. I have no idea why I picked this. I just thought it looked cool. I'm going to bring it to the top so that we see just it for now. And bring the brightness down. And then I'm going to scale it up again, just like I did before. And just like before on the other cloud, I'm going to mask out kind of a shape I see. And as I said, I like to kind of follow the shape. It makes it feel nicer than just going completely crazy and picking a random part, but it doesn't matter that much. But, you know, I like it. So I'm going to click F on this feather, change it to not 50, maybe 250. Maybe that's a little bit too much, maybe 150. That's what I had on that. Oh, it looks off to me because we have to click on it, go blending mode, screen. There we go. And, you know, you might even put it on top and rotate it and get something really crazy over here in the corner, or you could put it over here and it kind of feels like it's coming from where the sun is coming from. But yeah, might put it over here. I just like to kind of balance the frame, if you will. So maybe over here looks like a good spot. I'm going to go effect, color correction, tint, and color this. I'll change the white to, we've already got red and blue. I like this purple that's kind of coming up here. Maybe I'll try to eyeball that and match it. Not being super precise. And then maybe to make it more interesting, I'll do a stylize glow effect on it. Increase the intensity. So now I kind of got some of these cool, like, I don't know what to call it, intense spots. Yeah, put that down there. It looks a little like too fine edged, so I'm just gonna go effect, blur and sharpen, fast box blur, maybe make it a 2, 4 perhaps, just to soften it a little bit, because it looks a little sharp compared to, you know, like the clouds and everything else. And I don't imagine that it would, you know, look like that. But yeah, I kind of like that. I don't love this nebula thing as much as I like these kind of cloudy formations, but you know, it's something you can play with, something you can throw in if you like it or not. Keep it if you like it, throw it away if you don't. But yeah, so I'm just gonna maximize the space by clicking the tilde symbol and just make sure that grain is on top. The flaring part should be on top, so Unicron flaring. This flare should be on top because that's how flares work. And then gonna get out of that. And yeah, that looks pretty cool. I'm filming this before I am actually posting the picture, so who knows what the actual picture will look like, but this is pretty much the gist of how to create it. I just wanted to show it off because hopefully these techniques will help you make things, whether they're space backgrounds or like I just wanted to show it off because hopefully these techniques will teach you how to make, you know, whether it's space backgrounds or... I just wanted to show it off because I think it's really cool how you can make all this in such a short amount of time. Stuff like the Luminance tool and using fractal noises to create everything from stars to this, whether it's, you know, an energy beam or creating a space background. This is really powerful stuff, and it's really cool to see kind of how easy it is, because I know that if I saw this picture before I knew anything about After Effects, I would have thought it's a lot harder than what we just did, and it's not. So that's why I want to show it off. Hope you enjoy it. Go follow my Spark Side of the Force Instagram, please, and stay tuned for more Transformers and stop motion and After Effects related stuff. See you next time.